So now we're going to move on to Grimexe, and we're going to bring up the original
Yeah, because you had yeah. We're
Grimexe.
still we're still on the fence about how exactly we want that passive to play out.
Yeah, we are.
Welcome, new owner, to your Sentry Combat Robot. This battle-ready tool is the ultimate addition to your arsenal. Featuring a proprietary renewable energy source,
I really like
patented
Grimexe.
defense chassis, and an auxiliary tethered coil control system. The next generation of offensive advancement is here and ready to execute your every command.
Warning, Sentry Robot should only be used by trained operators. The owner assumes all responsibility for damage done to beings, places, or property. Please battle responsibly.
Okay, so Grimexe came a way back when they had early access. Alpha early access, they were calling it in Paragon. So that's an old trailer. You can clearly see that that trailer is different than the newer Paragon trailers. Um, but yeah, it's anywho, let's move on. So when you think of Grimexe, what do you think? I think worst carry in the game. I love his abilities though. Grim was your baby, but um, I don't. Anywho, uh, I think of refrigerator.
Yes, heavy. There we go. That's what I was thinking. That was sort of with the passive. My
Yeah.
original passive, they didn't really go for it. I just basically said that he couldn't be knocked back or knocked up because that was sort of the mindset of the Iridium Core. Like he was just this big, heavy character that just like, let's say Steel goes to run into him, Steel literally just stops on him. It's kind of like in Overwatch when two Reinhardts charged at each other. They just kind of knocked.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah.
this heavy piece of metal that's kind of walking around the.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I
Like I wouldn't care
remember.
if they completely took out his jump.
Yeah, I remember we were saying that, but then we were like,
Yeah, you guys didn't
no.
really like the whole not being able to knock up or knock back or whatever.
To knock out, to not knock up a carry, I think that's kind of wild. Uh, so we changed his passive over time. And what we currently have is Iridium Core. He CCs everyone that CCs him, can be CC'd by teammates. The reflex CC is 50% of the CC on him. So essentially, if you hit him with a stun, he'll stun you back, but for 50% of what that stun is. um, and at first we didn't have the CC teammates, but we had it at 100%, so it's just equal. But you can be stunned by your teammates, so try to just balance it out a little bit. Uh, but I quickly turned that down.
That's a lot of CC.
He went a little crazy with his kit reverb. Reverb. What's your idea for Grimex, dude? Uh, so what do you guys think of the passive? Do you guys like that passive for Grimex, or
On paper, it sounds kind of overpowered.
you think so?
A little.
So everyone that stuns him gets stuns for half of the time. But he
It's
can be.
a passive. It's not an ability.
It is. Yeah, that's true. But he can. But he can be stunned by his teammates, which means he can stun his teammates also. So there's a bit of a double-edged sword there.
It's not that hard to stun your team unless you're Gideon.
No, you can't stun your team in Fault.
I'm saying it's not hard not to stun your teammates.
Exactly. I just think. Uh, yeah, it could be. It could be a bit too difficult. Make his ult a skill shot. Okay. Yeah. Once we get there. So we got his RMB, which is his basic attack. That's obviously just going to stay the same. Then we got his RMB. Grim activates a 2-second duration shield that blocks the next incoming enemy ability. If the shield successfully blocks an ability, that damage is sent back to its source, dealing 25% damage of ability back as well as gaining mana. So it used to only give you mana when he used his little shield. But Chandler's idea originally was that you just whip it back, just like Yin's little ability, where she cracks her whip and hits your rock back at you if you rampage. So we were saying that, except it does 25% of the damage that it would have done, but you still get your mana back.
I like it. There's some skill to this ability.
Yeah, and I wanted him just purely deal more damage, like being able to just, I don't know, like be more aggressive with a character like that. Because again, you don't want the mindset of him having to run back. That was sort of like my original idea with the Iridium Core and like not being able to knock up or knock back. Like he was just running at you. Like again, the character's name is Grim.exe. Like you wanted him basically going in to terminate whatever he was like set out to terminate. So I don't know. I definitely a much more aggressive build was kind of my thought process behind this character. Yeah, like an
Reverb just brought up a
yeah.
good point. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I remember when we were talking about it, we were thinking about Grimexe and we were saying, look, we're not trying to make another basic damage carry. We
No.
want his abilities to be useful, because if you want to do that, you can move on to Murdoch or Twin Blast or Sparrow. So even though they all have their own niches, so what we're saying with Grimexe is to try to keep that hybrid carry. What will make him useful as a carry? Because when it comes to basic attacks, he's going to do less damage than the other ones. So it's really his abilities. So you're sacrificing a bit of damage, but for a bit of sustainability, in a sense, is what we were trying to go for. But now when I
Yeah.
read it, so let's say his passive CCs the person that hits him, but his RMB just sends it completely back at you. So let's say you get stunned. Don't those kind of overlap on each other, and then they kind of...
Well, again, that's why that ability was originally when I had my passive. It wasn't really with that other one in mind. I mean, you could obviously rework that however you want it to.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think that through, did I?
Yeah, so I mean, like, even if we don't go the CC route or we don't go the knockback route, just like having something that makes him a little more tanky without outright just saying more HP. That's sort of, I was like, what game mechanics can you add to a character to make them feel heavier, to make them feel more planted, to make them just a bigger staple in the lane? Like when you see them, you kind of know, hey, that's a thick boy.
Yeah.
So it's just like, what kind of ability do you give a character like that?
Stun who reflected it. Yeah, so if you eat the stun, you would also stun...
Yeah, like if they stunned you for 2 seconds, you stun them for 1 second.
Yeah.
They still have the upper advantage, but they still... I mean, I think that's what you were going at with.
Yeah, that was the idea. So lob shot that deals ability damage and quickly displaces enemies, moving them from the center of the explosion, and applies a 10% movement speed slow. I think this is the exact same, if I'm not mistaken.
Which one?
His Q.
It used to just displace them dealing damage. I added the movement speed slow.
Okay. Yo, you added the movement speed slow. Okay.
Yeah. So not only are they knocked away, but if you let's say the skill shot would be the mindset of if you can lob it in front of them. Let's say they're running back towards their tower, but you lob it in front of them, you could actually launch them back towards you, so you could deal damage while they are now slowed and they can't get away as quick. So that was sort of the mindset behind adding the movement speed slow to that ability, that you're not just displacing them back, because again, most times the easiest thing was to just knock them back and they just went flying away from you, but there really wasn't any advantage outside of that.
Yeah. And Reverb said he does like the idea that we have, but he thinks the passive at the moment is broken. Yeah, at first we had it 100%, and then we were like, okay, we got to calm it down a little bit. That's crazy. I can see what you think of by being, but you can be stunned by your teammates or CC by your teammates. So if you accidentally get hit by a Steel ult, an Aurora ult, Gideon ult, you would get that CC also and stun them. So it can actually work counterintuitive. Because if you're getting hit by a Gideon ult, well, you just knocked him out of his ult.
Did you guys mention the other idea for the passive that we had? Or
Yeah, the original one that I mentioned.
At first, the passive we had, or Chandler had, I gotta stop saying we for this. This was mostly Chandler. Most of this was Chandler. Uh, it was crowd control.
He couldn't be knocked up or
Yeah, it couldn't be
like
knocked up or knocked back.
He couldn't be knocked up or knocked
You
back.
can still stun him. You can still slow him. You can still whatever him. You just couldn't knock him up or knock him back. So really, that would only counter what Murdoch's grenade, if that's still a thing. Steel's knockback. Wukong's staff. I mean, there's only so many, and again, with a character like that, like it's all dependent on if those characters are even being played. So it would just end up kind of like with Aurora's. It's the mindset that like it's creating kits that make you want to counterpick. Like it's no longer just the base level of being competitive. Like there's literally characters where it's like, oh well, they picked him, so I'm going to pick this character purely based on a passive. It was kind of an interesting, like, again, I haven't played Fault and the new game state of any of this, so it's hard when you haven't played the game creating these kits, but it's sort of with the mindset of Paragon and the game state it was in.
Yeah, Reverb said that he's. Imagine if the passive that, like the CC passive, that became his RMB. And then we gave him a different passive. And he's also saying with 30% of the duration, because even if it's the RMB, it's still kind of busted. And then maybe just a simple passive of if he hits his basics, he gets mana to use his rest of his abilities. Which actually might be really cool because of his next ability, his E, where he needs mana. Oh.
Yeah, so that's sort of the mindset. Your basic attacks are using mana to apply damage over time.
Mm-hmm. But
which
maybe
I just like damage over time compared
mana.
to other things.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of him being like a big body, so a carry, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, just
yeah. So
big piece of metal rolling around.
yeah, so we're on to the E. When this ability is toggled, Pulse Cannon attacks using mana and has a damage over time effect. So literally the exact same thing as what it used to be. If you hit your shots, you get a damage over time. I think he used to have a slow though, didn't he?
Yeah, it didn't used to be DOT.
Yeah, it's not DOT.
Oh, it used to be a slow, and we made it damage over time. That sounds broken.
Yeah, that's why I added the slow to the to the lobbed shot.
Yes. Whoa, Grimexe says support. I didn't even think about that. That kind of just blew my mind.
Yeah. So I mean, like
that would work.
He doesn't have to be forced into just because he used to be something like reworking kits and whatnot. You can switch kind of where he could get played.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it wouldn't be outlandish to see him in that role. Obviously, he doesn't have some of those like traditional support abilities, but it would still be in those kind of.
Well, it's cool.
The thought process cool. Of that, yeah.
And then of course we have his ult. Grimexe comes to a halt and locks onto an enemy hero. After a short channel, a Gyro targeted Force Orb is launched. The orb will pass through the world and non-hero units that can be blocked by enemy heroes and ability-generated walls. The orb deals ability damage upon hitting an enemy.
Yeah, I guess so. And again, kind of like what Reverb was saying. So if instead, like, again, the only way I would rework that and take away the lock-on is again if you sit into that role and you have to make the skill shot, I want to have it have like a greater AoE and deal a little bit more damage. Obviously, if it's going to lock on to somebody, I mean, it just makes it easy. Just click onto it, find someone, click towards them, and call it a day. But definitely way more rewarding if it becomes a skill shot that you can hit them with.
Hmm.
I had no idea what I would have ever wanted to switch that alt. It was more so just kind of a placeholder to have this discussion.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think we're kind of all of the idea that if you're trying to play, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to Grimexe, but if you're trying to play a carry, why would you choose Grimexe over Revenant, Sparrow, Murdoch, or Twin Blast? Like, in realistically, right? So
Because he's
that's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. Well, his fun, but we're talking like objectively why, and uh, his his previous kit just wasn't doing it. You know what I mean? He was in the top three worst characters in the
yeah,
game.
and that's kind of where I'm trying to get at with any of these. Like, it's the thought process that they had with Overwatch. It's okay. Let's make every single character in the game feel overpowered, and then just balance it so it purely comes down to skill. So if everyone feels like no matter what, you get to click onto your favorite character and it can be viable purely because like the kit's basic mindset like is viable.
Hey, I know
You
who
don't want
this
any
is.
ability where you look at it and you go, I'm not going to use that.
Nice. Okay. And what Reverb said is what his idea for Grimmix was. And for everyone who doesn't know who Reverb is, he's just a really cool guy. And he's pretty fucking good at the game. And he's a tester. So the ult I had was to make it so you can freely aim the ult through the map and have it knock back whichever way it comes from. So he could wrap his ult behind someone and knock them back towards your team. Similar to Ness's little ball of electricity from Super Smash Bros. Remember when you go, I don't know, he go yeah 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 whatever he would say, and then he would like shrivel up, and then this ball would come out and hit them, and you control the ball. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, yeah.
That would actually be really cool, I think, because then you take away the skill shot. Uh, well, you take away the lock on, so you make it more of a skill shot, is what I meant to say. Uh, so it could hit himself and propel himself into his enemies for a lot of damage as well. Whoa! So like, yeah, I think lock on is yeah, it's something. Especially lock on just takes away a bit of skill. It's just it's just as it's just as simple as that. Um, but what do you mean reverb? Like if he hit himself, would
Like he could
him?
become the projectile then.
Oh, so this is technically a projectile that hits someone to make a projectile. Is
No, like if he decides to wrap it around himself and hit it into him in an angle that could go towards the enemy, he could literally launch himself in and just kind of like steal where he just charges forward and deals damage. He would just launch himself in, dealing damage. But now you're closer to them.
oh, that's really cool actually.
Yeah, so
Mm,
you have that because again, when you go into his ult, you have to plant yourself.
mm-hmm.
So if you have to plant yourself and then, I mean, obviously that gives you even flexibility right there. If you just put yourself into that position and then you go, oh shit, maybe I need to get away. I mean, even just launch yourself away from them. Like if it's it gives just situational being able to either hit them directly with it or launch you in. I mean, you're at a disadvantage because now you're closer and they can deal more damage. They can deal more damage or root you or whatever once you launch into them. But I don't know, just having flexibility in any ability, especially in alt where it's going to have such a huge cooldown, just kind of just being able to have more reward from using it.
Mm-hmm. So are we in agreement that you think that would be a better idea?
Oh, it'd be a super cool idea. I'd like to see it taken into effect. Like, I'm just trying to picture what that even looks like. Yeah, having the camera follow the ball, that would, yeah, definitely. I can just imagine that being a pain to put into the game, but it would look so cool. Plus, I guess if he's playing more of a support role, you'd be in lane with somebody, so it's a
Hmm.
little easier to kind of go into that place and not be too scared that somebody just comes up and ganks you from behind, but you still have to be aware that.
Hmm. And so I got it written down what I imagined from what Reaver was saying and what we were talking about. So what I got there is Grim EXE comes to a halt and uses a ball of electricity that goes through walls and that Grim controls. He can use the ball to hit the first enemy. This is bad English, but he can control the ball to where it hits the first enemy it hits, or he can hit himself or an ally with the ball, which propels himself or an ally in the direction they are hit from and explodes on impact, dealing a whack ton of AoE damage. And then Reverb is saying it would use like a camera. It would use its own kind of camera, similar to Muriel when she ults and camera just follows the ball through the map. So kind of like what's the character from Overwatch that uses the let it rip thing? Junkrat? And
Yeah,
how
yeah,
that has a camera and you follow it around.
yeah, literally just that.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really good idea. So anything more on Grimexe, or can we move on to the third character? Or is that the final character we have?
That is the final one that I'd been
That's the final
working
character
on.
that
Yeah, but we have
ch-
some of Empty's builds, do we?
yes, that's the final character that Junkrat came out with. So now we're going to move on to Empty's ideas.
What? Did you just call me Junkrat?
I might have. That was some of Chandler or Gotta Get Swole's ideas. And now we're going to move
Yeah,
on
no,
to
I
Empty's hero
reverb.
ideas.
I'm still not on with that passive, but that's an
Yeah,
ongoing
we'll update the
conversation.
passive. We're just not going to do it this very second. But yeah, I now that I've been a bit convinced, I would say that the passive is a bit too busted. And I think it would be better to be RMB. Truly. But we're going to get rid of that. And we're going to move on to Empty's ideas. For anyone that doesn't know who Empty is, he was a top player, a top European player back in Paragon. I remember, I like, anywho, and he is currently a tester as well. For some reason, the clip is busted in your Twitch chat. What clip? Hang on. Hang on.
Check your DMs. And was Empty going to get into any of these with us and talk to it through voice or?
Uh, I asked Empty, and he said if he gets a chance, he will. But
Okay.
we'll see. Yeah, he can't. Okay, let me just check. But I DM'd you a clip from Sock. Oh, you brought up a clip in. Oh, okay. Okay, hang on. Let me see what Reverb sent me there. Just give me 1 second. But while we do that, we're gonna slowly but surely switch screens.